Roanoke County Police Chief Howard B. Hall took the top job 2 years ago after a 26-year career in Baltimore County, Maryland, where he was commanding officer of the Operations Support Section at the time of his retirement there. Hall earned a master's in public administration at the University of Baltimore and a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Maryland. Hall has received a number of awards during his career and has been heavily involved with traffic safety issues. Upgrading technology and continuing regional cooperation efforts have been at the top of Chief Hall's to-do list since coming to Roanoke County in 2012. Hall says regional cooperation with neighboring law enforcement agencies is a must.
When something bad happens, all of us are going to be there. So, leadership, our officers need to work together and be comfortable working together because in a critical incident, they're all going to be there, and there's not going to be time to get to know each other. So one of the primary things that we've been working on over the last 18 months is really enhancing our regional cooperation and capability.
What happens when a bad guy crosses a line from Roanoke City to Roanoke County? Does the county then take the lead, or if Roanoke City's been pursuing somebody, does Roanoke City stay on the chase, or how does that work?
No, it's actually a great question. For a long time, Roanoke County, Roanoke City had an extraterritorial arrest agreement, which means that we can work in each other's jurisdictions. Last year, about this time last year, we got all of the councils and boards in the valley to sign off on an extraterritorial arrest agreement that includes everyone. So all of the police jurisdictions within the territorial limits of Roanoke County can work together. So if a Salem officer happens to be in Roanoke County and sees something bad happening, he or she can act on that. Likewise, when our officers, go into Salem, which happens to be where the courthouse is,
right.
So they're in there quite a bit,
right.
They can act if they see something, which is what I think the public expects. You see a police officer, something bad's happening, you expect them to do something. So, all four of the chiefs in the valley agreed pretty quickly that, hey, this is something that we need to do. Our legislative bodies and administrators agreed with that, and now we're in a great position to work together better.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of regional cooperation, I was at the groundbreaking ceremony. The law enforcement, the Roanoke County is going to be sharing the training facility with Roanoke City. Western Virginia Regional Jail will be in there, and I think the Sheriff's Department. Another sign of cooperation. How good will it be? How important will it be for you to train side by side with Roanoke City police officers?
We think there's huge benefits, and you probably know the history maybe better than I do. But I guess 5 or 6 years ago, the Roanoke County Criminal Justice Academy was formed. So we're doing our own training. We've been housing in the Public Safety Center. Well, that facility wasn't built to house a police academy, so they kind of get moved around based on where space is. So it's been a need to have a facility for that for some time, and there was a couple of proposals, as you might imagine. But when we really started to hash it out, it makes a lot of sense to do what we're doing, and build on to the city's facility. It's the same contractor that went through the procurement process that built the original structure, so they're familiar with it. We're going to make it look just the same, so it'll be kind of a seamless design. And then when we get in there, the first thing we're going to do is combine our entrance level training. The state of Virginia requires all police officers to have about 18 weeks of certain mandates. So we're already teaching those things, Roanoke City's already teaching those things, every academy of state is. So that'll allow us to put our recruits together for that mandated training. Then at its conclusion, and both of our departments go a little beyond the required, we'll separate them and we'll do our agency-specific things because we do have some differences. Then we'll bring them back together for a joint graduation. So those officers from the first day of their career will work together, which will make it much easier for them to work together in the field, and as their careers progress, work together as the future leadership. And we really think the possibilities here are unlimited because we all do in-service training and specialized training, and when we start sharing our resources to do that, we think it'll open up more opportunities for both of our departments and all the involved members. You mentioned Western Virginia Regional Jail and the Roanoke County Sheriff's Office are also members of our Criminal Justice Academy. So, even though they're not necessarily in the basic law enforcement class, when it comes to in-service, there's more potential for us to work together and have our people working together, which we think will be a tremendous benefit.
Speaking of teaching and training, you've done some teaching yourself, I think.
I have.
Adjunct faculty member for University of North Florida. Do you enjoy teaching?
Yeah, I do. And actually, I had some very good advice early in my career. I was working in an assignment in traffic that I really, really enjoyed, and had an opportunity to go to the training academy. And the commander I was working for at the time said, "Look, if you've got that opportunity, you need to take it." And I was a little bit reluctant, and probably we all are when you have to start standing up in front of people, particularly your peers, and provide instruction. But I did that, and I think that went a long way to help me move in my career in Baltimore County, and to some degree helped me get here. So when you do that, I feel like you learn as much from your classes as you do
kind of a two-way thing
to them.
Right.
Yeah, and I've had a chance through the University of North Florida and some other opportunities to travel all over the country and get a feel for what other agencies are doing and how they're handling the same kind of issues that we have to handle. So I really think it's been beneficial and certainly been enjoyable, despite the fact that sometimes the airlines don't cooperate exactly like you want.
And you wind up driving back from Charlotte back and forth.
Yeah, a couple times in the last week.
How, this is kind of a broad question, but how different is law enforcement, Howard, than it was 20 years ago? I mean, as far as responsibility, training levels, how different is it?
Huge. Training has always been extremely important in the departments that I've worked with, but of course that has evolved, and we're doing more training than we did 27, almost 28 years ago now for me. And one of the big differences from a training perspective, is self-defense. When I started, we had a nightstick, and of course a firearm, and your hands, and those were the tools that you had if you had to use force. Today, we still have a firearm and nightstick, but we've added pepper spray, we've added tasers, we've got weapon systems that are much safer for our officers than it was those years ago. Another huge change is technology. When I started as a patrol officer, I had a radio in the car. I had about 2 switches that turned on the siren and the lights, and you always kept a pad of paper on a clipboard there, so when the call came, you could write down the address. Now, each car has a mobile computer. Their calls are being dispatched over that computer. They can access criminal justice databases on that computer, and that it's a mobile office. Compared to what it was that many years ago, and the technology continues to expand. In this day and age, almost every day, to increase those capabilities, which is of course a training challenge.
Right. Well, you're a fan of technology. I've seen you do presentations. I mean, you, as far as being able to analyze data and also being able to communicate more with the residents, you're sort of a fan of technology.
Right. Well, because something else that has expanded tremendously is the ability of crime analysts. And crime analysts are generally not police officers. They're folks that get trained and educated, in the techniques of, looking at data, particularly crime data, traffic crash data, to help us identify problem areas and sometimes even predict where problems are going to take place. And we've seen that, say, over the last 10 or 15 years, go from literally, having some maps on the wall with push pins, to computers and statistical programs that can really pinpoint where hot spots are. And that's one of the key things that we've been working on in Roanoke County in the last 18 months. We hired an analyst in January of last year. She's doing a fantastic job for us, accessing the tremendous amount of data that we collect and have always collected, and then trying to help us use that data to deploy the resources we have effectively in the places where they're needed the most to try to keep people safe.
We've got just a couple of minutes left. I wanted to just bring up a couple of interesting things. You served in some command capacities at some special events.
I did.
Visits by Pope John Paul II.
I did.
The president, was that Obama or before that? Or
actually, Clinton, Bush, and Obama.
Okay.
Remember, Baltimore's pretty close to Washington.
Right, and
so
I think you served at inauguration also.
I did Obama's first inauguration.
Is that nerve-wracking? Are you always your head on a swivel when these things happen, or is it just kind of interesting to be there?
To some degree, it's very interesting, obviously, to be there. The most significant of the ones you mentioned was actually the visit of the Pope. That was in the middle 90s when he came to Baltimore. That was the largest planned event that department had ever handled. And he was actually only in the county very briefly. The city requested assistance, and we secured a couple of the sites. I will tell you that I was very happy when he got in the helicopter safely and took off.
Right.
And we were done because the threat level against him was very, very high.
Really?
Yeah. Remember, there were attempts on his life prior to that, so you know, that really had it you know, at a very high level, and it actually took about a year to plan for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before we go, how would you describe what's your philosophy about law enforcement? Do you have a particular code that you live by, or philosophy about law enforcement?
Well, I mean, I think you have to take, you know, the good out of a lot of different things, but from an operational perspective, you know, I generally, you know, would say data-driven and place-based. You know, one, you know, we have data that tells us where incidents have occurred, and we need to use that in resource deployment, and that's very much focused on place as opposed to people. There's a lot of research that shows incidents concentrate around geography at a higher degree than they do with people, so you can use the resources there. But at the same time, we still have to make sure that we're responding to calls for service, we're conducting thorough criminal investigations, and we're giving good service to the citizens of Roanoke County. You know, and that you mentioned, you know, interacting with neighborhoods. That's, you know, also an important part of what we do, so people know us and trust us and will call us when they need us.
Right, we're going to have to leave it there. Chief Howard Hall, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming
Gene.
in.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. This is The Interview. I'm Gene Marrano. We'll be right back.